I am recording. Thank you. So we made some pull requests. Let me fetch everything. Okay, so 2 weeks. Jasmin is still working with Matteo on concurrency. We merged last Friday support byte array colon type in migrations. So now you can do, and there's a test, small one, but one, so colon, and you can do a byte array property. Create content permission. This is a new permission that has been added to support a scenario which is that you want to prevent people from creating new content item that they will own. And with the current set of permissions we had, we could not do that. So we decided to create a new one. The change is not complex, and it will work with dynamic types also, so that's fine. Yep. And there is a migration to update the permission for existing types and existing roles that have the publish permission already to create them. Sorry, the edit permission to create them. Then Lorenzo, a JavaScript event on select. The issue was on the date, on the date time. What was the issue? In fire event JavaScript change when date is changed. Okay, so the event change is not fired when you change the date. And then this one, updated query and the dev branch, updated query element driver, export import for the query element driver. Okay, dynamic forms. Good. Sipke, demo?
Yeah, I have a small demo.
Okay. Triage first. Triage, sorry. Status. Status and shot 2. Fetching everything. Two weeks, I assume. So we have Jean-Thierry working on many branches. So this one, hosted service, I assume it's I don't know which one it is, but it's an old one, so let's forget about this one. We have Jasmin here on dev branch, first install chat tenant, which it was missing features, but it's not missing features. We fixed it later with the, yeah, this is different. What is that? What branch is that? No, this is not a time. Okay, not a time from Jasmin. Work going on. Dynamic cache. So Chris, I had a meeting with him yesterday where he explained why he removed ESIs from the caching module, and that made sense, so he removed it, and I agree on that. So he's back on this branch to clean it. A few changes still to be done, but that should be ready very, very soon. It's working. Just some feedback on the PR. Sipke default, this is a branch. I didn't see any PR for this one. We'll see later. Open issue LS generation, removing ESIs. Shape tag, this is some feedback we got yesterday on Gitter Room that the shape tag, liquid tag, the shape liquid tag didn't have a way to provide custom display type or alternates and so on. So Jean-Thierry made it. and the goal was to be able to render a menu with a custom alternate. Okay, to be able to define a new template for this specific menu instance. Okay, so that's good. This is a branch we're working on with Gentilion to migrate everything to Netcore App 2.1, so ASP.NET Core 2.1. And is also working on this one to make the main application, the host application, work with custom controllers and razor pages and so on. So the main application will behave like a module. So it's working on that. Tenants, this is to be able to configure, so two things, and one is from NixID, to be able to configure the list of tenants and their features from code. And the second thing for this PR is to be able to configure middleware and services, and also default features for all the tenants. So your application will define what features and middleware are enabled on all tenants. That's it. So still working on that. This will be a demo, I assume. A password feature. Antoine. Oh yeah, this is refactoring what he has done about resetting passwords, but as a specific feature. And this way we can have a better dependency management and don't require specific dependencies like user for everything. And this feature is named user password. Nick working on JSON API. I merging dev branch. That's good. This is another time branch. I did some things. This is beautiful. I did functional tests, and I will show you how it works. And I also did refactor the logging. So very important. Louis. Oh my God, we'll see that. So Louis sent me an email saying that the logging code we had in Orchard had many issues. So I fixed it as part of this PR. One issue was and actually it has been merged, so it should be somewhere. Did I merge it? Maybe I didn't merge it. Maybe I didn't merge because somebody saw that. So let's see, for instance, what we should do. So for instance, when we do log error, we were using 0 and 1, like number-based parameters, expecting it to work like string format or console write line. Okay, 0, 1. Actually, it doesn't work like this. Logging, you can put any value you want here, any name. Nothing to do with the dollar string. It's just templated strings. It's just a name here. Same thing here, another name. And the nice thing with that is all the loggers will be able to get this name and store it as structured logging. And for instance, we'll see the message, but App Insight or sec or Elasticsearch logging will be able to display a column with this value and all the values where you see the instance of this log, and also filter by value. So if we use tenant name everywhere where we display a tenant name for every log message, then we can filter all the log messages for a specific tenant name. So that's the idea. So we should not use the numeric-based parameters, but the name-based ones. Query source and query name in this case. Okay, and so this is the first kind of issue. You see, every time there was a $0, it's replaced now with a name. Second kind of issue is when we actually build the string dynamically with a value. Same thing, instead of building a string with the value, we can just use a static string with the name parameter and the parameter here. Two advantages in this case, the same as the previously, which is that we can have structured login. Second advantage is that we don't build a new string dynamically and don't allocate anything for every feature ID. Which is why we would sometime, like not in this case, but now it's not more necessary, but most of the time we will do if logger is enabled log information to prevent an allocation if we don't want to render the string, so to prevent this thing from being evaluated. But now with this pattern, which is a static string and the parameter like this, there is no allocation. So that's fine to just ignore the if log enable debug or whatever. So this is the second case. Don't use interpolated strings to render some logging. And so Louis sent me an email, and I applied that everywhere, and now we'll be sure that we follow this thing, this pattern everywhere. And you see role, permission, and for everything that is related to tenants, I'm using tenant name everywhere. You see tenant name, so we can filter by tenant name, so that's much more useful. So that's it for this branch. Functional tests, it has been merged, so it's in dev now. The idea is that we want functional tests to ensure that when we do a change, the site is still passing setup, or that each feature can provide functional tests to ensure the feature is not broken, like workflow or like content management, things like this. Reflecting on what we had on. So why I work on that? Because remember last or 2 weeks ago when we added the reset password from Antoine's PR, setup didn't pass because it required another dependency, and we didn't catch it until it was merged in dev. So this way we will be sure that we are not breaking setup at least. And then we can add more functional tests. Reflecting from what we had in Orchard 1. In Orchard 1 we are using Cucumber, which is a DSL2 C# generator. So we're using a custom DSL to write unit test, to write functional test. This was not useful, not cumbersome, but yeah, there was no much value from it. And the ones who were writing the unit test were actually devs, so there was no reason to write a nice English grammar-based DSL. For those who don't know, if I go on Orchard CMS, code, src, Orchard specs, and I go to this thing, you see, I can create, this is a string, and then given I have installed Orchard, when I go to and I fill in and so on. So yeah, it looks like it's easy to write, but you actually need to understand the syntax. So you just look at other scenarios. Oh, you're on the way, but yeah, you're already. It's Skype, it's not even open, it shows me. So you see, you still need to look at documentation or to copy paste from external examples. So in the end, there is not much value from that. A drawback from that is whenever I wanted to do something special, we had to tweak the DSL to add something else, like supporting regular expressions, and this thing will generate a C# file, which itself will then bind into a custom set of APIs that were written specifically in Orchard to query the app that will be running and extract HTML and so on. So what I wanted to do is to reuse everything that exists already, and I'm reusing 2 packages. I'm reusing where is that? I'm reusing Jest and Puppeteer. So Jest is a JavaScript unit testing framework, okay, and Puppeteer is Chrome headless with APIs to manipulate Chrome. So this thing will let us open Chrome, load pages, click on buttons, check if the title is that, get the HTML content, and do CSS selectors and jQuery selectors and so on. And Jest will let us write unit tests that will use Puppeteer in the API to manipulate Chrome. In the end, it looks like this. So in the in the test functional folder, if you create a file called test.js, whatever, if there is test.js inside, it will be taken. And this file, what it does is before every single unit test, it will delete the app data of the publish folder, which is created. So when we do test run, test setup will install the npm packages and then publish the application, Orchard CMS, into the publish folder. Okay, and then when we do test run or npm test, it will run every functional test file, which is first delete the app data and then start.net Orchard.cms web to start the app. So that's super fast, and then it's just intercepting the console, but it's not necessary. Then it closes the app when the file is done, and this is a section of the unit test. And we say it should display Orchard setup. This is just the name of the test, and this is what it's trying to do. So await, expect is from jest, so this is like assert equal or asset whatever. Expect page.content, which is a Puppeteer API, to match Orchard setup. So I'm just checking that when, so there is a before all here, a before all here. For this set of unit test, before all, page go to base path. So this will go to the home page. And this checks that we have Orchard setup. And then what we do here, we check that the active element ID is site name. So I'm just ensuring that the focus is given to the site name by default. And then should not be able to submit the form. So when we hit enter or we click the submit button, then we can still see that we are on site name and we didn't go through setup. Or should set up a SaaS site on SQLite. So here this is very interesting because we can access all the things from HTML. So page.type, in the site name ID, I type my sites. And then I click on the recipe button, which will open a drop down to select the recipe. Then I will click the link that contains the text software as a service. Okay, click. And then we select the SQLite database provider, we type the table prefix, password confirmation, and then we click on submit button and we wait for the navigation to be done. And we expect to see welcome to the Orchard framework. So this thing ran the setup. Okay. And the full section here is called setup. And after we have another section, but the site is already set up. So what I'm trying to do is create tenants. So we go to the login page and check that we are asked for the login. Then we enter the credential and we say, okay, login. And then we go to list the tenants and we should see one tenant, which is a default tenant. You see, go to admin index, we go on the default tenant. And then I will create a new tenant agency. So I go to create a tenant. We could just click on the create tenant, but I decided to go on the page to prevent that if one day we change the button name or whatever, it will break this unit test. That's the decision I made for this one. I create a name agency and I say click on the button create. We should provide helpers maybe to find a button with the name create just instead of doing this selector, or maybe that exists and I cannot find it. And then I expect to be back on the index page and that there is an agency tenant. And if I go on the agency URL, I should see Orchard setup, and then I file the setup and it setups. And then I say same thing with blog, and this is the description of your blog. Okay, so this file will ensure that we can set up and we can create tenants with the agency, with the software as a service and blog recipes. And just that will prevent us from breaking lots of sites, lots of scenarios. And next is that we had a functional test in every module, or at least in the modules. So right now it's taking the files from this folder. Maybe we should change it to be able to have functional tests in every module, so everything is organized correctly. I think that would be nice, and that will also encourage everyone to create a functional test like this, at least in our solution.
And that will be very good.
And it works with JavaScript. You see, I can click, and so because it's Chrome headless, it's Chrome, so you can access everything from Chrome. Another thing that is interesting here, if you run by typing npm test --debug, it will check that there is a debug option, and if there is a debug option, it will define a timeout of 1 minute instead of 15 seconds per unit test. But it will also slow down everything. I can't remember what it is. Well, it will slow down everything and also not use the headless. Where is that? Headless. Here. So Puppeteer launch, if it's debug, headless equals false and slow-mo equals 100 milliseconds, which means if we pass the debug flag, it won't be headless. Headless meaning it's just a console app and there is no display, there is no UI that is appearing. Okay, but if it's not headless, then it opens actually Chrome and we can see what's happening, and it's doing it in slow motion. So when we say type agency, it will say AGENCY, so we can see someone typing, okay, instead of being as fast as it can. And this way we can follow what is happening in the browser and see where we made a mistake when we write the script, or when there was an issue, and see what is the issue on Chrome. So to debug your functional test, that's very useful. And what is nice also is this full thing here. Let's see on the CI how it looks like. Oh, chart. Go. So if I go in the CI, nightly, not Travis, I'm just running it on Abeyor, so on Windows. Okay, this is the latest build, interesting. So I look at the console, this is building, this is deploying, creating Docker images. Unit testing, and then it's installing npm, then it's publishing the app in the publish folder, and then it's starting the functional test. So it's intercepting the console. We can see the two scripts and look at the time. So to do the first setup, 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 6 seconds to set up one tenant, 6 seconds, 4 seconds to set up the new one. And what it's doing, so it should create a tenant based on the agency. It's creating the tenant and then going to setup and then executing the setup. This is everything, okay? And everything ran in 28 seconds. So we were able to create those 3 tenants in 28 seconds, which is kind of fast compared to what we had in Orchard 1, where it will take minutes and the full thing will take hours, and people complaining on TeamCity that we will take all the time of the server instead of letting everyone use it for all their unit tests. And this is the slowest thing that we can have in the functional test, doing the setup. So from that we can, we could decide to save the app data and reuse it for all the other unit tests, or we could decide to just set up a new tenant every time we need for a module. So we'll see, but it's super fast, so I'm not afraid of that. We'll see how it goes. We can see the console intercepted. In case there are errors, that will be interesting to look at it. So functional test done. That is a good thing that it's done. We can rely on that now to add more functional tests. So this is Sipke working on this thing. Antoine upgrading dependencies. Jasmine at the time. Louis is back. So Louis sent 2 or 3 PRs last week. So who doesn't know Louis? Well, I'm sure nobody will say they don't know Louis. Louis is the architect of Orchard 1. He made Orchard. Everything you like in Orchard, he invented it. And if you don't like something, probably he also invented it. Okay. Like shapes, all the modularity, everything which is in Orchard, mostly he was the main architect of Orchard. So it's good that he's looking into Orchard Core, because he's apparently using it for his work in Bing, not the CMS itself, but the framework, the modularity thing. And he made some PR to improve the targets and prop files, how we build things, how we manage the dependencies and the versions. So let's look at some stuff he did. This optimizations, not copying also empty assemblies or not necessary assemblies, fixing typos. So this thing is new. For instance, he changed the dependency props file. So this one to have versions like this, and also a script that now when we look at the CS-proc file, I don't know where he made that, but when we look at the CS-proc file now, we don't have to set the version. It will be taken automatically from this file. We don't have to put a reference to the name of the package. So it is improving actually the build pipeline, which is good. low-level stuff for the Orchard core framework. Sipke, updating libraries to 2.1 RC1 final. So removing ASP.NET Core and the .NET Core might get fixed because they're on NuGet, and updating the package versions to 2.10 RC1 final. Matthias fixing IE11 issues. Antoine fixing the field editors, the number editors. Sipke fixing liquid edit part, okay. And fixing a UI with a button which didn't appear. Improve hover on submenus. There is a GIF showing the issue. That's the issue with hovering menus. So when you hover, if you get out of the zone, then the menu collapses again, and then you have to start again. I'm not a huge fan of hovering, but that's how it is right now. Oh yeah, that's the difference with the packages now. So with the thing implemented, now you can just package reference the name you want, and you don't have to paste the name of the package version here, which will be in a dependency props. Just say I want that, and it will take it automatically from whatever dependency we enlisted in Orchard Core. Okay, and he updated all the CSproj files. And this is, so I was using this technique because this is what is done in ASP.NET, and this is better than ASP.NET, so that's good. Jean-Thierry, Jasmin, Antoine on their branches, Sipke on his branch, same thing, same guys, again, working hard, and that's it. Questions? Cool. Sipke, demo. And obviously, awesome demo.
Obviously. So I will be working on two things, and I'm going to show both. It's a set of widgets that make it easy for admin users to set up a form, and a set of workflow activities to handle form submissions. I'm going to show both, and then maybe we can discuss a few options that I've been thinking about. So let me share my desktop.
And just for the ones who are still using Orchard 1, widgets in Orchard Core is not the same thing as widgets in Orchard 1. A widget in Orchard Core is just a content item that you can render in a zone. Doesn't have to do anything with layers.
Right, and if my understanding is correct, these content items, they are embedded. If you add them to a flow part, then the flow part is the container of those content items.
In this case, yes.
They're embedded.
But you can, but you don't have to. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's an implementation detail of the flow part. All right. So first off, there's a new feature called Forms that you will want to enable, and then what you can do, you can create a new page.
Page being the new name of flow page, so this is the default. This is a flow, and a flow is a list of widgets that you can arrange on a page.
Exactly. And because this is a flow page, you can add widgets to it. And as you can see, there's a bunch of new widgets as part of this feature that allow you to create input elements. So for example, you would have to start with the form widget because that itself, it uses the flow part so that it can contain other widgets, and we need this form element in order to actually render a form tag and be able to set a few properties such as the form action, where to post the fields to, and to specify the method. And you can set a title, for example, contact. I implemented a little bit of JavaScript to update the title because as you start adding a number of widgets, they will be indistinguishable from each other. So it would be useful to actually see the name or title of each widget. So let's say we add a input, which we call name. So that will be a person's name that we want to receive. This will render as a regular input tag, so you can set a type. And I just added a bunch of them. We can discuss whether we want more specialized widgets or whether the generic one is enough. But we can discuss that shortly. Enter your name. This will render as a placeholder text. And because this is a flow, this is a widget part of the flow part, you can, of course, control the width and alignment, which is cool. I will add another input, and I'll make that an email. Email and a text area. This is, for example, the message that you want to send to the site owner. And a button. So this will be the submit button.
Can you make the demo even more awesome and click on preview?
Yes, that's a good suggestion. So I'll click preview. So on the right hand side we have the preview, and so this is a good thing because this is also a discussion point. So for now we don't have labels, and of course we can add a label widget as well. And for example, this would be name for the name input, and this we want on top of the name input field right here. So there you go. In the live preview that has been updated. I'll quickly do the others.
So if you want to insert before something, there is a little icon on the top right, the plus.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. That's true. So here we can say, is it, so
yeah, this one.
you will have to use this one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's better.
Yes. But no, it's inserting before, so you
oh, okay.
Because it's insert. So.
Okay. All right. So now we have a simple contact form. And then the question is, of course, where does it submit to? And for
so
that,
let's stay here first. Can
right.
you align the name on the left and the input just align on left for the name label? You see what I mean? On the same line, name, and just to show how to do that.
Yep, definitely. So we'll do name label 50%. We'll move email label on top of that, and we'll make that 50%. And the name input will also be 50%, and the same for email.
This is important.
50%. There you go.
Because you get much more value there to be able to create your custom forms, I think. People will care. People care, I'm sure. I mean.
Yeah, if any website you create, you'll want at least a contact form or some sort of form. But also the nice thing is you can create your own custom login forms or registration forms and handle the submission via workflows that actually create users or accept user-contributed content that that you can then either actually turn into a content item or send an email to some editor.
Go on, do that.
There's a lot of, yeah, okay. So let's say this is a contact form, and now we want to receive an email when somebody save this one or submits that form. So for that, we will need the workflows module. So we'll create a new workflow type called contact form workflow. And we'll add a HTTP request event. We'll set this to post. We only accept posts. Save this guy. Turn it into a start activity. And before we continue with this workflow, I just copied that workflow URL, which we'll use in this contact form, and then configure it to post the fields to that URL here. So this will render as the action attribute on the form. So with that in place, we can now say add a task, send an email. I add a little bit of liquid here. Of course, we don't have first name and last name, but we do have a name field, like that. And then we can create a body saying something like name is name, email, email, etc. And of course the message. And this will be interpreted as an HTML thing, or it will be sent as an HTML body. So you should actually use HTML tags. So.
And don't you want actually to, well, in terms of security, because you are taking anything that they are writing. So if you send the email, they could send a link or, I don't know, bad stuff. JavaScript, if your email client is not protected, secure. So maybe you want actually to encode it. But I assume that it is encoded automatically in this case. Yes, this is encoded.
That's a good question. I haven't tested it.
This is encoded.
Okay.
Unless so you say raw, it will be encoded. So that's fine. That's safe in this case.
Okay, so by default it's encoded. That's good. And what reminds me, this form, it automatically renders a anti-forgery token. So if you want, you can actually validate the submission, or that token, you can actually validate it. There's a validation category, and it has a validate anti-forgery token. So we'll definitely want to do that. We don't want.
Honestly, that should be a property of the HTTP request.
Well, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's always validate. Well, you can just configure.
That should be that should be a checkbox. Validate on forgery tokens, and then.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right.
Antoine says you are missing a /p.
A /p.
Mm-hmm. In the email body.
Oh, here, yeah. Yeah, this is bad.
On the name first lane. At the end.
Oh.
You didn't close the tag. Details.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a front-end developer. All right, so there's that. One other thing I would like to show. Oh, actually, I'll wait for that. That will be the next.
Do you have your email working?
Good point. Yep, I have it almost here. We need to configure SMTP. We'll set it to something like that. It will be localhost 2525. This is my local SMTP for dev. That's the wrong thing. So we have a local SMTP host here. Almost good. Hmm.
2525.
HTTP. Well, this is the web.
Okay, so
UI. Go. So there you go. All right, so this is saved. So we have a workflow, we have an email. So now if we go here go to contact form. So this has been submitted, and we have an email here with the submitted form fields right there. And of course, we will want to redirect the user to a thank you page probably. But also, we want to validate the forms, and that's the next thing I wanted to show. We have a reCAPTCHA widget, and that also I think that raises the question, how do we in general want to validate the form? We can, of course, add multiple validation steps in the workflow, which actually we have here. So let's say we added a CAPTCHA element, which I'll do in a minute. We will then want to validate that CAPTCHA. But that also goes for required fields. We'll want to validate fields whether they're required or whether they meet other criteria, such as a minimum length or a valid password. So this could all be done here in the workflow. So let me show you that first, and then we can discuss better or other options. So first we have a CAPTCHA, and maybe let's also say that the email address is required. Validate form field here, and this is right now. This is it just checks whether the field has been submitted, but it doesn't have any options like length or format or things like that. So the field name would be email. Email is required. We can, to keep it very simple, we can do this sequentially, or we can do it a little bit more fancy, which I like. I'm going to add a fork, and this will have a validate CAPTCHA outcome and a validate email outcome. And it's going to have a validate. Actually, we're always going to first check the validate the forgery token. So we'll keep that here. Disconnect this guy. And then from this thing, we're going to fork. And then this is validate email. And this is validate CAPTCHA. Because if we have, say, 10 fields, then we'll check all those 10 fields simultaneously. And if any of them validation fails, then model validation errors will be added. And then on the form, you will see all of those messages at once instead of one at a time as you try and submit the form again and again and again. So this makes it a little bit better. So in this case, we don't want to do individual checks whether this was valid and whether this was valid. We'll just want to validate everything and then check the model state if any validation error occurs. So for that, we have a validate form task. So this is already becoming a little bit technical. You basically need to understand model state validation, and that will bring me to the point I'm going to make in a minute. So this is done. So this is also the reason why I have 3 outcomes for a validation task, because we have invalid outcome, a valid outcome, and a done outcome, which will be invoked regardless of the validation status. Because in both cases, regardless, I'm going to validate the form state here, because one validation might fail, another might succeed. So here we're going to do the final check. If any validation fails, then we're going to redirect to the contact form. Sorry, that's the wrong. That was the wrong activity. We'll want this one. So go to contact form. if validation fails. Otherwise, we're going to send the email. And of course, redirect to like that. Did I do something wrong? Yeah, you know what? I need to add a join. If you have a fork, you always want in this case, well, I don't know if it's in all cases, but in most cases, you definitely want a join. Because we want to wait all activities, not just the first one that finishes. So this one disconnected, this one. So as you can see, this join will wait both of them to execute and then continue. So now when we submit the form, it will perform this validation if we added a CAPTCHA, so we'll add a CAPTCHA element to the form, but we'll also add a validation summary to the form so that the user can see why why form validation failed, if it failed. So let's do that next. So here we have insert. We'll insert a validation summary. And before the button, we'll have a reCAPTCHA, which needs to be configured. So we have to do that first. Okay. Preview. So now this is what our form looks like. Let me see if I can just submit it from the preview. And let's leave email empty. We'll not try and pass the CAPTCHA. We'll just submit. And what happened? It submitted the form to the workflow. It performed the validation, and it noticed that the email field is not sent, and the CAPTCHA validation failed. So we can now try and pass this guy. But it also noticed that my name is no longer there. I have to type it in again, which is very inconvenient. And that's because I'm not actually posting to this item controller that's rendering this page. I'm actually rendering to the workflow. And all of the fields are being submitted, but I'm not binding those fields to model state. And that's why I added another activity to actually bind the form submission to the model state. So it's increasingly becoming more complex. So we need to discuss options to make that nicer. So now I'm just failing the email address, and it's all fixed now. And now it works. And of course, the thank you page doesn't exist, but that's easy to fix. Yeah, so let me show the workflow again. So in order to fix that form model binding, there's a bind form to model state that will fix that issue. So I will have to do, well, actually this is good. It should first validate, and then once this is done.
I think we could have some contextual links in the widget for form that with a click of a button on the form widget, you could say, oh, create a workflow for that. And you could have different types of workflow, and it will scaffold the workflow for you in a workflow type, and then you can just change the properties if it's that complex, if we can't make it simpler.
Yeah, well, that's a good option as well. I haven't thought of that. That's definitely an option.
Bertrand is typing.
There's a few other options that I would also like to discuss briefly, at least. Okay, so preview is broken now. So now let's try the model state thing. Oh, actually, this is what I was working on, but I didn't completely fix it yet, so it's not going to work now in any case. So never
That's
mind.
fine. We trust you. Yeah, or maybe some of these behaviors should be by default and not depend on workflow states like
Yeah.
form binding. Well, we can say the form widgets, they bind both ways by default and done. And maybe there is an advanced option, you can uncheck that and okay, we don't do that for this field, but otherwise they should do that by default because this is the expected behavior when you create a form like this. So yeah, keep the extensibility, but make the story simpler for the global cases, the non-current cases.
Yeah, precies. Yeah, that's good. That's a good idea. So I was also thinking of a few other things. For example, when I like the fact that you can validate individual fields using workflow activities, but for users, maybe we could make it simpler.
It should be in the widget itself. The first, your widgets,
exactly.
They already have 4 fields. There should be 1 or 2 fields by default with a tab or an advanced thing that expands, and then we can access the things that we don't care or that should not be displayed every time, like the settings, like validation, like your ID, CSS styles, and everything.
So on a per widget level, you mean?
Yeah.
So for example, I have the email. Let's say I have a name input. Do you think there should be validation properties here in a separate tab, for example, in an advanced view?
Yeah, I think so. It's common.
Because then what we can do, absolutely. So what we can do then is not have you have to implement all of the individual validation through workflow. We could have a single workflow activity, which is a more higher level activity, that knows which form has been submitted, because the form would submit a hidden field with an ID identifier. Then it can read the form definition and then read all of the validation rules and do it automatically for you.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's one thing. And another thing, what about these labels? So right now you have full control over where you want to show the labels, but in many cases you will probably want to render a label first and then the field next. Do you think it would make sense to have an option on each input field to just enter a label name?
You know my opinion, because I already gave you, which is I prefer to have different elements because it's not hard to make them, but it gives us more flexibility to organize what we want to see, where we want to see, or theme that.
Right.
So when you create a field, you don't also have to care about the label, different options. And the day we want to change how labels work, then we have to change all the fields. That scares me.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So then I guess you are of the same opinion when it comes to validation fields, because I just showed the validation summary, but we could also have a validation message underneath any input field.
You could have validation message like we do in Razor. We have a validation summary and a validation tag to inject if you want.
So it would work like this. So now I have a label for email input, the email input itself, and then a validation for.
If you want the message there, but I think probably people will take the validation summary, like
probably
it's simpler,
Yeah. But if they wanted to, they will use it like this.
My opinion, but there are 11 people in the room. So Thierry's opinion? No, that's great. That's awesome. Like the fact that it's reusing the flow thing because you have a container. I assume you didn't have to work on that. That's good. And still,
I didn't have to do anything except override a shape template because I needed to update that copy of the shape template to render a form tag, which also means I copied the logic to iterate over all of the widgets and actually render them. So that's what I had to do. Maybe if we create some sort of wrapper shape thing, maybe we can even reduce the code duplication. That would be nice. Another thing that I would like to improve is right now this I created a shape override for the combination of a widget that is of type form. So it depends on the form of the content type called form. But ideally, we could create any content type with any name. Maybe, I don't know, it could be any type name, but then we would need some sort of alternate based on the form part that I created. But those are little things that we can improve and make it better. Another thing that's important to be aware of to work with this model validation is that I implemented action filters that will check if the form is being, if there's a HTTP post request, and if so, it also checks if there's a model state validation error, and in that case, it will store it in temp data. This is called the exporting filter, and then there's also an importing filter, and I have to add it globally because these action filters, the import and export filters, are added to the global action filters list, which I'm not entirely happy with that, because it means as soon as you enable the forms feature, every request will have that action filter. It's very highly optimized, so it's not dragging or anything, but it's just there.
Okay, we'll see. Bertrand is mentioning, and I agree with that. So when we create a form widget, you should have some links to create a workflow with that, or to link to the workflow that is associated with that, so you can navigate back and forth from the workflow.
That's cool. That would also mean that we don't have to use the HTTP event necessarily.
It's just a custom event. It's like a form submitted event.
Or not even. It could just be because if you want that link, then you know which workflow is linked to this form.
Yeah, and you have a generic controller.
Then you can just invoke the workflow.
Yep.
It doesn't even need to start with a trigger or an event.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, so you have a generic controller with a workflow, with a form ID or whatever.
Yeah, precies. That would be very cool.
Good. Don't forget about the anti-forgery token that should be inside a checkbox in the thing.
Let me make a few.
We don't need another item, and everyone likes it. That's beautiful.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, we'll add more workflow things or options in the form to limit, for security, like limiting the rate of form submission. We have reCAPTCHA. We could later, people will add spam and things like that. That's nice. I like it. Yep, the flow is fine. We can customize the shapes per theme, so that's good. What else? Yeah, that's good. No, everything I think we said is fine, and you will be able to do that. Cool. And obviously you can we don't have, I'm not sure we have that. Yeah, so if you go to the content type, let me show everyone something. If you go to content definition, content types, and you select the form content type, and you edit it, and you can make it creatable. You save it, and because it's a content item, it's a widget, you can say new and create a form. So now this form is an independent content item. It's not owned by another page or anything. It's a content item. So you can create a name, and you can also give it an alias if you have the alias part, and then you can just make a form and inject this form in any page you want by reusing it, because it's an independent content item. It's not owned, it's not contained. So you can just say from a liquid page, from the footer, from the template, from everywhere, you can reuse the same form and submit it from where you want. That's an example. And for instance, on the agency theme, we have a form in the footer. So this will be a typical example of what we could do. From the recipe, create a form from the recipe, give it a name like contact form. It's not part of a page or whatever, it's just a form somewhere we can inject anywhere we want, like from the layout. Just mentioning that. Yeah. And maybe the title should be not a title, but should be just the alias, because the form doesn't have a title. So it could just be an alias instead of a title for a form. If you see what I mean.
That's very cool. I'm gonna try that out.
Okay. That's what people ask, like, oh, I want to insert a form there. Well, you can make a form and insert it using layers, or you can inject it from your liquid page, from a template, from a razor view, you can access it. So that's cool. It's just an independent piece of data. And it can be cached also. When you render it, you can cache it with what Chris is doing. So you don't have to read the database again to read the content item unless it has changed. So that's super, super nice. Everything is making sense together. That's good. Thank you, Sipke. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can rest in peace after. That's good. You have done your job on your shortcore. We have layouts, we have dynamic forms, we have workflows. Oh, fuck, we need taxonomies. Okay, good.
I'm glad, but now actually I'm going to use all those things because at work we started to actually do a real implementation of Orchard by building we need a dashboard. So we're using this fancy Bootstrap-based admin theme that will be the front-end theme for our users, but using Orchard at the back end because of user management, role management. So I'm excited about that.
That's great. Great. Yeah, and maybe the widgets need some categorization. When we say add widget, we don't have categories, no icons, but that's something we can work on later. Also, it's independent. And maybe then this widget extension we could do to categorize them could also contain like dashboard widgets, and then we could have the dashboard feature that is actually an editable container like we have, and it's already in place. We just need a dashboard widget that contains other dashboard widgets, and we organize them, and then we can render them on the dashboard so that we have a dashboard, an editable dashboard like we have in Orchard 1. Same thing, should not be that hard to make with all of the things we have. And then we can even have a form in the dashboard if we want, like, to submit an issue, to create an item from the dashboard like WordPress has. I'm just giving you ideas if you want to work on that later.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what we will need.
Good.
That's cool.
And that should be super simple to do. Everything is in place, just reusing components. Beautiful. Thanks a lot to everyone. And see you next Thursday or next Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.